Hi everyone. So we're in October, Shocktober. Maybe you've cried, maybe you've screamed, maybe you've hidden behind the sofa, hidden under the bed. Maybe you felt your skin crawl, your heart race, you ran out of the house only to come back again and realise that there are still more horror movies you need to watch. So here we go with a few more suggestions. Wakewood from 2009 is from the revamped Hammer Studios, and this is a pagan ritual horror movie. We have here Aidan Gillen, Eva Berthistle and Timothy Spall, so a really talented cast in this, and this involves the death of a couple's daughter, and then Timothy Spall in this village of Wakewood, who offers this couple the chance to have their daughter back for just 3 days, and he has to perform a pagan ritual in order to be able to do this. So in this movie we have really talented cast, really talented actors, and it is quite watchable, and there is some gruesome moments in this, but the script is weak, so the cast make the best of it as they can. But just think about the psychological ramifications of losing someone that is close to you, and then the possibility of having them back for 3 days, whether you would want that, how that would actually work, and then the thought of losing them again, all that kind of psychological stress that would be placed upon you, and the film doesn't really explore any of that. Nonetheless, it is a quite engaging film. Eva Berthistle, I would definitely recommend you watching her in Ken Loach's film A Fond Kiss. She is absolutely fantastic in this. But she tries her best in Wakewood. Aidan Gillen, best known for being in The Wire and Game of Thrones. He's also does the best that he can, and Timothy Spall, classic actor. So yeah, a good cast, but overall a bit disappointing because of the script, but definitely some gruesome moments, and it's an interesting subject. The Hearse from 1980 is a film that I have here on this drive-in cult classics box set, and it concerns a school teacher who inherits the house of her deceased aunt in California, and when she drives there she's harassed by this mysterious hearse that follows her, and when she gets to the house she finds that the locals are quite unfriendly also. This is a very tame horror movie. There's very little in the way of suspense. The hearse itself is fantastic, but we don't get to see that nearly enough. Most of the drama of this one takes place inside the house itself. Now, the cast includes Joseph Cotton, but the main actress here is Trish Van Devere, who is maybe best known as being the wife of George C. Scott, and she starred alongside him in the film The Changeling. Overall, The Hearse is a very tame horror movie, very lukewarm suspense, but The Hearse looks impressive, and it's enjoyable for the very Trish Van Devere-ness of it all. The Prowler is a slasher from 1981, and it also goes by the title of Rosemary's Killer. So the Prowler begins in 1945. We've got American GIs coming home from the war. We get a letter that's being written by a woman to one of the GIs, letting him know that she's met someone else whilst he's been away. And then we cut to a graduation dance, and we see a young couple get brutally murdered. Then we cut forward 35 years to another graduation dance. It's been put on for the first time since that fateful night. And once again, the Prowler is out on the kill. So the exceptional thing about the Prowler is that it has makeup effects and practical effects by the great Tom Savini. So some of the kills in this are really quite gruesome, bloody and spectacular, and quite fun, I would say, to watch, particularly one involving a knife that goes through someone's skull out through his chin, and then his eyes roll up. That is very gruesome to watch. But the thing is, there's just little in the way of characterization here, and very little in the way of suspense. So there is a lot of prowling in this movie. So we're in big houses that have lots of staircases and lots of rooms, and so we have characters just walking around a lot of the time, and we're always one step ahead of them in terms of knowing where the Prowler is, and so there just is no suspense. But yeah, for the gruesomeness of the effects, the Prowler is worth watching. Black Magic from 1992. Sounds like a horror movie, but sadly, no, it isn't really. So this one stars Judge Reinhold from Beverly Hills Cop and Vice Versa fame, and he's an insomniac who keeps getting visions of his dead cousin visiting him at night. And so, scared by that, he heads off to California, where he then meets up with his dead cousin's ex, played by Rachel Ward, and starts falling in love with her, only to find that his dead cousin appears to him again, letting him know that she's a witch who put a curse on him to be eternally undead, and so he needs to kill her. Yeah. So this is kind of a black comedy, I would suppose, but it's not particularly funny. There's no suspense, there's no horror in this. It's really only because of the cast, so the likeable Judge Reinhold, the overplaying Anthony LaPaglia, and the beautiful Rachel Ward, that makes this watchable, together with Brian James as well, famous for being in Blade Runner. He has a very unusual voice in this. So yeah, kind of interesting, I suppose, kind of watchable. Is it good? No, not really. Whistle and I'll Come to You is a really fascinating one from 1968. It was actually made for the BBC's Omnibus series and directed by the theatre director Jonathan Miller. But it's based on the writings of M.R. James, a writer who had also written the novel Casting the Runes, which was adapted into the classic film Night of the Demon or Curse of the Demon, directed by Jacques Tourneur. But with Whistle and I'll Come to You, what we have is a university professor, very stuffy and believing that everything can be rationalised, and he heads off to a Norfolk coastal town for a vacation, full of self-belief and self-importance, and discovers during his stay, and particularly when he finds a whistle on the beach, an ancient artefact, and he blows into it, that actually maybe not everything can be explained. So yeah, this is quite a fascinating one. It definitely has some interesting imagery in this film, some imagery which is quite haunting and quite effective. But you do have to be patient with it, and definitely, without wanting to give any spoilers, I just want to say for sure that you have to recognise that there's a lot of speech in this film which is mumbling and burbling and rhubarb kind of stuff, and that's very deliberate because it represents the Michael Hordern character having all of this self-importance and not actually really listening to what other people are saying. So that's a very deliberate ploy in the film. So yeah, interesting film for sure. Like I say, some absolutely fantastic moments of haunting imagery. Yeah, a good one. Scarecrows from 1988. This one's directed by William Wesley, who only did one other horror movie, and that was Route 666, starring Lou Diamond Phillips. This one also has cinematography by Peter Deming, who also has worked with David Lynch on films including Mulholland Drive. But yeah, this film concerns a group of criminals who have hijacked a plane after having carried out a big bank heist, and then one of the crew decides to betray the rest of them and jumps out of the plane with all the money, and so the rest have to land the plane and go in search of him. They all end up at a deserted farmhouse, and outside the farmhouse there is a large field that is just full of scarecrows, and that's when the horrors begin. So the great thing about Scarecrows is actually the design of the scarecrows themselves. The sackcloth faces of these scarecrows is really, really effective and quite scary. But actually, those particular scarecrows don't move. And actually, when we get into some of the kills that happen in this, it's kind of scarecrows that step out from behind the ones that are on wooden crosses, and they start carrying out the killings. So that's a little bit bizarre. The acting in this is really, really amateurish and not very effective, and again there is little in the way of suspense in this, but certainly if you enjoy some gore, then you're going to get some of that in this, and some of the kills are really quite effective, good makeup effects, etc. So yeah, kind of enjoyable. Like I say, I really like the design of the scarecrow faces themselves, but much else of this is a little bit disappointing. Bad Moon from 1996 is a werewolf horror movie, and it's written and directed by Eric Red, who's best known for being the writer of both The Hitcher and Near Dark. And this one stars Michael Prower, who's one of my favourite actors from this film, Streets of Fire, which I absolutely love. But yeah, Bad Moon gets off to a bang, literally, with Michael Paré banging his girlfriend inside a tent in the forest, oblivious to all of the carnage that's going on outside as a werewolf raids the camp and then enters the tent as well during their lovemaking and kills his girlfriend and gives him a vicious strike. He then leaves this forest in his Silver Bullet Airstream and heads off towards his sister's to go and stay there. And she welcomes him and allows him to stay there for a while, but the family dog is keen to look after the family and protect them and senses that something is not right. So again, Bad Moon is not a great movie, it's not particularly suspenseful and it's not particularly scary, but what I do love about it is the actual werewolf design and the werewolf practical effects. I think they're absolutely excellent, except for a really ropey CGI sequence towards the end when there's a transformation. It's a shame that they did CGI for that. But yeah, for the actual practical effects and for some of the cheesiness of this, Bad Moon's quite enjoyable. Frankenstein General Hospital is from 1988. Now, if you imagine a mashup of maybe Young Frankenstein, Saturday Night Live and Police Academy, and all put into a blender, and then a script that's not nearly as good as any of those, then that comes something close, I suppose, to describing Frankenstein General Hospital. A pretty unfunny horror comedy, this one. But yeah, all set within a hospital. You've got Frankenstein down in a hospital basement carrying out his experiments and creating a monster. And then on the upper floors, there's a little bit of sex comedy going on as well with the hospital chief of staff and the hospital psychiatrist, who's played by 1986's Playboy Playmate of the Year, Kathy Shower. So yeah, maybe, I suppose, if I'm being generous, there's a few gags here which aren't too bad and might raise a smile. But yeah, overall this is quite weak and certainly not at all scary. Imprint is the initially banned final episode from the series Masters of Horror that came out in 2006-2007, and this was directed by Takashi Miike, the director of Audition and Ichi the Killer, controversial films. And so initially Takashi Miike was given free rein to be able to do what he wanted for this cable TV series, but then when producers actually saw the final product, they were like, what the hell, we cannot show this, and so the episode was banned for a while at least. But yeah, so what we have here is Billy Drago. Remember him as Frank Nitti in The Untouchables. He goes off to a Japanese island in search of his former prostitute lover, and he encounters a disfigured courtesan played by Yuki Kudo, who was not disfigured and was very lovely in Jim Jarmusch's Mystery Train. But yeah, she explains to him that his prostitute lover is now dead, and she sits him down and tells him a story about what happened to her and her own experiences. And so that's where this tale of horror begins. Now, what we have here is a film that is deeply, deeply, deeply unsettling. Some of the imagery in this is just really, really horrible. So yeah, probably, even though I've seen Audition, I would say this is a lot more disturbing to watch. So certainly if you don't like scenes of torture, scenes using needles where you don't want needles to go, rapes, tortures, dead fetuses, you name it, it features in Imprint. And I'm not sure if it all makes the story very effective. Certainly graphically it's memorable because you won't forget some of this imagery, but was it all really worth it? I don't know. But yeah, Imprint definitely will leave an impression on you, but definitely if you're sensitive at all in any way, do not watch it. The Devil's Hand from 1961 is a satanic cult horror movie. But don't worry, it's a very tame one, and certainly there's no scares, nothing to upset anybody in this one. So it concerns a seductress played by Linda Christian, who uses mind control to enter the thoughts of a man that she wants to seduce, and once she achieves that, she then gets him involved in a satanic cult. And the cult leader is played by Neil Hamilton, who most viewers will recognise as being Commissioner Gordon in the 1960s Batman series. So yeah, this is all quite amusing stuff, very, very lightweight, as I say, and it's made watchable by the fact that it stars Linda Christian, a very beautiful actress and someone I've talked about before because she's in a film that I really wish more people would see, which is this one, Thunderstorm, directed by John Gilliman. And also there is interesting stuff about her personal life as well, but I won't go into that here. But yeah, so she's watchable. Neil Hamilton makes it watchable. There's a very funny use of voodoo dolls in this movie as well, which is quite amusing. But yeah, like I say, all completely lightweight stuff, and nothing here to shock or scare anybody, but it's fun and watchable. The Haunted House from 1921 is a fun little 20-minute comedy starring Buster Keaton. And in this one, he plays a bank cashier who, after a misunderstanding, ends up running away from authorities and heading off to a house which is allegedly haunted. But it isn't actually haunted. It is, in fact, owned by a counterfeiting ring who are trying to keep people away. And then also the house ends up being populated by an acting troupe who had been performing Faust. And so whilst Buster Keaton is inside this house, lots of comedy ensues as he encounters people with sheets over them looking like ghosts, and actors and cast from the Faust theatre troupe. So yeah, lots of fun and shenanigans involved in this one. It's an entertaining one. The story is not particularly good at all, but yeah, great antics, great sight gags, and just great fun watching Buster Keaton in this. Amir is a film from 2009 directed by Hélène Cattet and Bruno Forzani, who also did the film Let the Corpses Tan. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So it's a mostly wordless film, but it is a French film that is a homage to the Italian giallo. And so this film incorporates a lot of imagery that you would expect to find in an Italian giallo. So we've got lots of close-ups, lots of facial expressions, the use of black gloves, lace, all of that kind of thing, the kind of houses and environments that you'd expect to see in a giallo. But yeah, plot-wise, this is all really strung together. It concerns a girl going over 3 different time periods, and so it's really about sort of womanhood and coming of age and things of that nature, and the horrors associated with it. So yeah, kind of light in terms of plot, I suppose, but the imagery is really always captivating. So yeah, I enjoyed watching Amir, and it incorporates as well music from some of the Italian giallos, and so we also get to include some Ennio Morricone on here as well. So yeah, Amir, very, very watchable, but yeah, don't expect much in the way of tight storytelling, because it's not that kind of film. It's a very artful film, but yeah, fantastic imagery. Okay, that was a variety of horror movies, maybe not all of them strong on the horror aspects, but yeah, hopefully some there of interest, and certainly some there which I anticipate some of you won't have seen, because some of those are a little bit hard to find. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of those movies, and please do join me again. I know I don't typically talk about horror, but it is Shocktober after all, so there we go. But yeah, hope to see you again. All the best. Bye-bye.